You're listening to the Reds Podcast.
This is episode number 50. It's part one of a two-part series on tips to build a strong virtual team. If you're worried about getting burnt, projects not happening, and people running off with your money, but you still need to get more done, we'll show you how to make that happen. Building a strong virtual team is next on this episode of the Red Podcast.
This is the Red Podcast. Real entrepreneur development. Make more money, work less, and live a life of freedom. No BS advice that really works. Here's your hosts, David Hooper and Laurel Staples.
David, our wedding is coming up soon, and we don't have you a ring yet.
Not yet.
How many rings have we bought for you so far?
About 3, maybe 4. Yeah, they don't fit. They're either size too large or they're too small.
And we've gotten you sized how many times?
I've gotten sized a couple times, but I think my finger swells up in humidity. And in the summertime, very, very humid in Nashville. It's throwing everything off.
Well, one time you were, an 8.5, and another time you were a 9.5. So we got the 9 ring, and that didn't work. The 8.5 didn't work.
Plus, it gets very complicated due to comfort fit and traditional fit rings. This whole ring thing, for a piece of metal that's more or less just a circle, it gets very, very complicated.
So if you're listening and you have any thoughts on what should be inscribed on David's ring, when we actually do get the correct ring, you can send that to us at Red Podcast or let me or David know on Twitter.
Alternatively, if this is a bad sign and I should walk away from this marriage with Laurel, please let me know at...
That's so mean. Oh my gosh.
Is it a sign? Do you question that though?
I don't think it's a sign. My ring fits great.
Yeah. Well, of course, because I'm awesome.
Yeah, because I give you my correct size. I'm just going to say that.
No, you know what it is? The rings fit. I just got big knuckles.
That is true.
It's like a boxer, like I've been punching something, man.
You want to be able to get it off. I told you don't need to take it off all the time, but...
No, not all the time. I just want to get it off without having to go to the hospital.
That's fair. That is totally fair.
There's all these horror stories. I was looking up ring sizing on the internet. There are these horror stories about going to the hospital. They say, don't be embarrassed. It happens all the time. You know what they call muffin tops. Like when women, I guess it happens to men too, when they wear pants that are too tight. There's also like muffin top rings where people wear sizes that are too small for their finger. And I don't want that. I want to have a ring that looks like it belongs there.
One girl that I used to work with back in the day, she was out and about with her married friend, and some guy was hitting on her. So her friend said, just borrow my ring and just put it on and you can give it back to me later. She puts on her ring and cannot get it off. Tried for days, used Windex, used every method she could possibly find to get this thing off. Couldn't get it off. After a week, she had to have it cut off to give back to her friend. Not what you want to be doing.
No way. No way. What is RED, Laurel?
RED stands for Real Entrepreneur Development. If you are a speaker, author, coach, blogger, podcaster, somebody who is trying to get your message into the world and make money while doing it, this is going to give you the tips, the strategies, and the know-how to make that happen.
Eventually, if you're doing that successfully and if you keep listening to us, you're going to have to bring in staffing. And on this episode, we're going to talk about 9 tips to build a strong virtual team. And you should listen to me, and let me tell you why. I've had a virtual team going for the last 10 years. I've started with one of my project managers, actually. She wanted to go into her own business, and I started a virtual staffing company with her that was very successful and ran for about 5 years. On Elance alone, I've spent about $150,000. I was the number 2 buyer on ScriptLance before it was taken over by freelancer.com, and I've done dozens and dozens of projects on Odesk. I had 3 full-timers working on Odesk for a couple of years, and I've done a lot of one-off projects. Laurel, you've done a lot of these with me. So we're going to talk about how to build a strong virtual team. The biggest thing that I see, Laurel, is that people are worried about getting burnt. They're worried about projects not happening. They're worried about people running off with all their money. And I'm going to tell you right now, all of those things will happen if you do enough projects. It's inevitable, even if you go through what it is that we're going to talk about today. But we can help you mitigate that, hopefully get out of some of these problems and keep them from happening, because I think 99% of virtual workers are great. There's some other little problems that come up, and we're going to help you to not have those problems.
I think another problem that people face, if you're like me, you might be a slight control freak and you want to do everything yourself and be in control of everything, but that's really not going to work if you want to build a bigger business and you want to be more efficient. So this will help you outsource and build your virtual team the right way so that you can feel comfortable letting go of the reins a little bit.
You've got to get over that. You've got to trust. Just today, I had a technical problem on a WordPress plugin, and Laurel, I asked you about it. I said, do you feel good? She said she wants the admin password for the blog. And that's where we've got all our podcasting stuff, but we wanted to get this plugin resolved, and it was the tech support that was asking for this. It's like, well, what the hell? Did it. The problem was solved in about 10 minutes, a whole lot better than us getting on the phone and trying to do it ourselves. Yeah, you got to get over yourself and just trust that most people are good, and that all these fears that you have about doing things like giving out passwords or bank account numbers, I'm not telling you to be an idiot. Check these people out, and we're going to talk about that here on the rest of the episode. But most of the time, you can do that very, very safely.
David, since you have been doing this outsourcing and creating virtual teams for such a long time, I know you have about 9 tips, and I'd love for you to just kind of walk us through those today, since I'm going to deem you the expert on this. So what would the first thing be?
First thing is communication. And it's funny because you talked about being the micromanager, kind of on top of everything and not letting go. And in some ways, you have to be that kind of person to give good communication. One of the biggest things that I see, and I see it a lot of times with people that are trying to get writing done, you see it in graphic design, and that's just not being very specific about what it is that you want. You can't go to 99 Designs and say, hey, I need a logo, I need it to look cool. That's not good enough direction. You can't go to Elance and say, hey, I need a 25-page ebook on dogs. Instead, what you want to do, if you're looking for graphic design, you need to say, hey, I need a 4x4 logo, or it needs to be this many pixels. It needs to be this exact color, not just red, but this very specific shade of red. Here are the fonts that I like. Here's some other logos that I like. I need something similar. If you're going to Elance or anywhere where you're hiring a writer, instead of saying, hey, I need the 25-page ebook on dogs, you need to say, I need 10,000 words, and it needs to be about training yellow Labrador retrievers. Very, very specific. Give people an outline to go over. You're still going to have to do some work. You can't completely outsource this, not if you want to put your name on it and have it be in your voice. But you do need to be specific. A 25-page ebook on dogs, it's almost like when you were in junior high. Laurel, you were a good student, so you probably didn't do this, but you have the wide margins. And instead of using college ruled paper, you would use like the elementary school paper.
Wide rule.
Super wide rule, absolutely. And it's not like a legal size piece of paper. The long one, they're going to make it like a shorter one, like a little bitty moleskin notebook or something. You say, yeah, this is 25 pages. Sometimes you'll have freelancers that'll do that. I had one time, and he said, I like to give as a bonus to my clients free graphic design and images. I said, okay, what? It's not going to cost us anything. And I'm thinking 25 pages, 250 words a page. That's kind of what is considered the standard. It would have been if you were in junior high, right? This guy gave me 25 pages, and 23 of them were just pictures of dogs. I said, that's not going to count for me. I'm not paying you for graphic design. I'm not paying you for layout. I'm paying you to write an ebook. But he didn't view it that way, and I just ended up paying him and moving on, learning the lesson, and that's a great tip. Communication. Never made the mistake again.
So it seems like communication helps you, one, get exactly what you want, and also get the right person to work on exactly what you want, somebody who's a good match for you.
Yeah, and that's something that we should maybe look at for a future episode of Red Podcast, getting very, very clear on what it is that you want when you're posting a job on Elance or Freelancer or any of these virtual assistant type forums. That's going to weed out the people that you don't want. For example, if I were looking for a writer, I'm going to tell people that I want a native English speaker. You've got to know the language. And it's not because somebody who speaks English as a second language doesn't know English and can't communicate, but there are certain ways that a native speaker, you and I are from the South, Laurel, and if I say something to you like, oh, bless your heart, or how's your mom and them, that means something different than it would mean in another culture, even from our country of the United States.
Just as a note, you've never said those things. I just want to say that.
True Southerner right here.
So communication is number one. What's number two?
Plagiarism and also copyright. This isn't to say that everybody is out copying other people's stuff, but if you're hiring outside of the United States, this is assuming that you're inside of the United States. The world is a very big place. People have different laws on copyright in their country. People have different beliefs about copyright in their country. Here's another thing, is that sometimes people don't know what it is that would be copyrighted. I did a book, and the graphic designer, I was hiring a guy from outside of the United States, and this is something that we do that's very common with graphic designers. The Red Podcast logo, not a guy from the U.S. That's not as important to have a native English speaker or somebody located where we are here in the U.S. But this guy actually got a picture of Steve Forbes. I don't know how he got it. Steve Forbes, everybody knows him as, I guess, the heir to the Forbes fortune. He's run for president 1 or 2 times, maybe more. And he put a picture of Steve Forbes on the cover. I said, that's not going to work for me. This guy's a celebrity in my country. You got to find some other images. So make sure that the images are cleared when you're getting graphic design. Somebody else, I did an audiobook project, and she came back with an image of Rachel Ray. Everybody knows Rachel Ray if you've watched cable or if you're into cooking. Apparently Rachel Ray has not made it over to India.
So what do you do about that? Because I accidentally did that once. Not being a music person myself, I was stealing images off the internet to put together just a workshop flyer that I was doing. And I'm pretty sure I put a picture of Carrie Underwood on my flyer. It was very small, but I'm pretty sure that's what I did. Didn't know it till years later.
Yeah.
I was just trying to find a nice looking woman to be like, hey, it's nice and this workshop is great and happy people go there. So how do you fight against copyright issues like that, especially if you don't know, maybe you don't know what Rachel Ray looks like? How would you know that the person's coming back to you as something that isn't plagiarized?
There are search engines. There's one called 10i, TINEYE.com. 10i will look at graphics, and you can see other people that are using graphics. Even if it's like an iStock photo, something that you've licensed, you can see the other people that are using your graphics. There's also something called Copyscape. So if you've got something written, it's more or less something that works inside of Google, and you can put in text. It will let you know if the text pops up. I had that happen with a book project that I did, Laurel. We were working on a book project, got the stuff back from the writer, put it in Copyscape, and it turned out, and we're so grateful that this thing didn't make it past this, it turned out to be a Jack Canfield book. Everybody knows this guy from Chicken Soup for the Soul, and this writer had literally taken this book and put all sorts of Jack Canfield stuff in there. Started out great. I think she just couldn't keep up with what we needed to be done, and I think she put a bunch of filler in there, so we missed it. And it was very, very embarrassing, and it could have been potentially devastating as far as like a lawsuit or credibility.
So what did you do? Did you pay her? Did you get your money back from her? Did you report her? What happens after somebody gives you plagiarized or copyrighted material?
That's a funny story. Well, not really funny at the time, because it was done on one of the major freelancing sites. I've already mentioned it, and we spent a considerable amount of money with them. We put the money in escrow, 100% in escrow, and we get the project back 100% done before any money is released to people. So we got it back. It was checked. My project manager checked it, and the money was released. And then when she got into it, like I said, this was just filler content. We found out that it was stolen. She said, I think I might have missed some stuff. We double checked it, and sure enough, we had missed it. So we had given this woman, it's a few $1,000s. And we went back to the company that shall remain nameless, and we said, look, somebody's given us plagiarized stuff. We want our money back. We had a arbitration. They agreed with us, but it just got to be a mess. The company said that they would help us get the money back. They never did. We looked at it like, well, we've had great service from them 99% of the time. Let's not die on this hill. And they banned her. Now, here's the scary part. She ended up coming back. We ended up finding her there later, and she was using a different name. And she tried to get business with us again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's very, very gutsy, huh? But people are using
smart.
aliases and stuff, and you build a relationship with them. And we ended up getting her kicked off the next time and apparently banned. So there's some stuff that slips through, but I want to make it very, very clear that 99% of the people are honest and 99% of your experiences are going to be good. We've done hundreds of projects, and the reason we've had these problems, it's just a numbers game. Occasionally you're going to run into bad people.
Moral of the story, check the work that you get. So what's number 3, David?
Well, number 3, this is avoid brand new providers. Don't go for somebody that's just gotten on one of these sites. It's not because they're necessarily trying to rip you off, but it could be because their skill level is not what it is that you need. So if you're going to start out with a brand new provider, you need to start out with a small project, and that's just a good idea anyway. For example, if you wanted a book written, you might have somebody do a couple of articles for you or a few articles for you, then move up to maybe a report, then move up into a book. See how they work on the small stuff before you get them on the big stuff.
Well, that's exactly what I'm doing with my book now, is sending out the first chapter to multiple editors to see how I work with them before you dive in, pay them a ton of money, and send them your whole book.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah, you have to do that because sometimes it's just not a match for you. They don't meet the working style that you have. They can't meet the deadlines. Sometimes they're just no good and they really can't do. You never really know till you jump in bed with them, so to say, and start doing those deals. I will say this, I've had some really great experiences hiring new providers. Sometimes you find somebody that's brand new to a site, they really need the work. I've got a great story on bigboldimpact.com, my blog, which I will post in the show notes. Episode notes will be at redpodcast.com/50. And this was a woman from the Philippines that I hired, and she sent me the sweetest letter about a year into the project that we were working on, telling me how this had changed her life. She was laid off. The auto factory that she was working at just wasn't in existence anymore, and she was really appreciative because I was providing for her, her family. She had a couple kids. Great story, and she was a new provider, and sometimes you have things like that happen where somebody gets laid off and they're brand new to the site. They've got to have a first job sometime. Sometimes it can be you.
Number 4, David.
Laurel, have you ever had a bad experience with a provider? Let's say it's a plumber. Let's say it's a restaurant that you go to and you kind of question it. You say, well, maybe they were just having an off day and maybe it wasn't them. Maybe I had something to do with it.
Yeah, it's called TGI Fridays. I stopped going there over a decade ago.
So Laurel does not like TGI Fridays, yet I doubt that you've been on Yelp just completely blasting TGI Fridays.
No, that would take energy.
Well, it does take energy. And sometimes you don't know, like maybe TGI Fridays was having a bad day.
Days. Every time I went there. But I'll go with that.
Okay, so let's just assume, though, that you don't want to ruin TGI Friday with a bad review. And that's how a lot of people are when it comes to providers. You feel for them. Maybe they didn't do such a great job for you, but you realize that maybe you were at fault and didn't give them clear communication, or you weren't clear on the deadline or whatever. Sometimes people just don't want to take the energy, like you mentioned, Laurel. So I say positive feedback only. No feedback equals bad. And if you see somebody that has done a lot of jobs, and if you go to something like elance.com, you can see when somebody has an open job, but if they haven't had any feedback for 4, 5, 6, 10 jobs, that usually means, from my experience, that they're not doing a very good job. When somebody does a good job on these sites, people go out of their ways to give good feedback because they know that that's the lifeblood of this business. You're not going to get work if you don't have good feedback. But rather than give bad feedback, they just leave no feedback at all. They skip it altogether. So if you don't see feedback when somebody bids for a job on one of these sites, they've been on the site for a while, or you can see open jobs, I would say pass on them.
Or if you go to Yelp and no one has said anything about TGI Fridays, that's why. I'm just saying.
That's the reason, yeah. And with that said, if you've been to Yelp, it's actually a funny parallel because sometimes people get caught up in the smallest things, and I think that can happen for providers as well. They'll let you respond to feedback on sites like elance.com. So you can respond if you get bad feedback. You can explain why something was a certain way. Yeah, we all know that it's easy just to get on the computer and complain about bad service or little bitty things. Sometimes there's truth to it. What you really want to look for is pattern recognition. You want to see if they've gotten a lot of bad reviews, a lot of good reviews. It's kind of like looking at a book on Amazon. You really can't trust the great reviews. You can't trust the bad ones. It's usually somewhere in the middle.
Do you feel like it's a red flag if someone does have a couple bad reviews?
Yeah. And I think sometimes people can start out really, really great. They're gung-ho, and maybe they're in between jobs when they start freelancing, get a full-time job, have a kid, get divorced, get married, do whatever it is that happens in life. The quality of work can suffer sometimes. This is kind of a funny story about all the freelancing we've done. You wouldn't believe how many people have health issues or relatives dying. I kind of feel like that junior high teacher when you're getting all those excuses. Because we've heard these stories so many times. Like, yeah, both your grandparents died like last year. Stop telling me your grandmother just died, and that's why you can't get this thing in. You do get a lot of excuses, but at the same time, just because somebody doesn't work for somebody else doesn't mean that they won't work for you. I think about me, I think I'm a great self-employed person, but I'd be a terrible employee. So that's something to think about.
I think just going in informed, reading the feedback about that person, and just knowing what you're getting into is going to be good. So let's wrap this up for today. These were 4 out of 9 tips that you have on building a strong virtual team. The first 4 are communication is absolutely key. Be specific to get the work that you want and work with the people that you want. Watching out for plagiarism and copyright issues is number 2. Be sure to check that stuff before you pay anyone. Number 3 is avoid brand new providers. If you do have to go with a brand new provider, start with something small, a small project to see if you're a good fit for them. And number 4 is look for the positive feedback that a provider has, because if they have no feedback, it's not really a good sign for you to work with them.
So that's 4 out of 9 on the next episode, Red Podcast number 51, which will be available to you at redpodcast.com/51. We'll go into the other 5 out of 9, continue the discussion on how to build a strong virtual team. If you've got questions, if you've got suggestions for episodes, we are available at redpodcast.com. Happy to hear from you. Happy to take your suggestions and make this show better. Questions at redpodcast.com. Also, we could use your help building the community. We are trying to build a community of real entrepreneurs, the podcasters, the bloggers, the book authors, the guys that are out doing it, making a living for themselves and helping other people, doing just what we're talking about here, building a strong virtual team. If you subscribe via iTunes, if you're on iTunes, we'd appreciate you pulling it up, searching for Red Podcast, leaving us a review. That helps us pop up in the iTunes search engine more often, helps people find us, helps us help more people. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time, where we'll continue this discussion on how to build a strong virtual team on the next episode of the Red Podcast.
You've been listening to Red Podcast, Real Entrepreneur Development. Subscribe today using iTunes, Stitcher, or via RSS at redpodcast.com.